This is based on a true story. It's called Allegory of the Gym, or sometimes referred to as post-traumatic sports disorder. The battlefield of my youth was made of long, finished maple planks. Painted lines, squares, rings, and half circles of varying sizes and color littered the floor, designating the territories for every exhibition of athleticism and demonstration of strength. Of course, the only boundary I was concerned with was the thick black stripe that divided the gymnasium in half and separated my dodgeball team from the opposing squad. No matter what method the coach used to divide the class, it always seemed like a horde of bellicose jocks ended up on one side of the room, and a group of awkward, socially inept pariahs were dispatched to the other. Before the onslaught commenced, we were reminded of the rules. Stay to your side of the courts, hurl one of the plethora of abrasive rubber balls at an opponent with as much force as you could muster. Anywhere below the neck was fair game, with the exception of the genitals. If the opponent strikes you with one of his spheroid projectiles or manages to catch one of yours in mid-flight, you're out. I, like my fellow misfits, had no ability or desire to actually win this game. Our motivation was simply to avoid being pummeled. A shrill whistle sounded and the bombardment began. In a matter of seconds, we were being pelted from all directions. I turned to look at one of my friends a moment before a speeding orb came crashing into the bridge of his nose, knocking him backward to the ground. Another teammate was struck right between the eyes, just as the ball grazed my left ear. "No face contact!" the gym teacher bellowed, but his command only seemed to intensify our adversary's desire to inflict serious pain. I had heard that the football team had taken a beating the night before, and it seems they were looking to return the favor in some sort of misplaced sadistic catharsis. Several more of my peers took blows to the head, and I turned to the only adult in the room to see if he was going to interfere, but he remained silent. Apparently, he thought his 3-word intervention was all the matter required. I refocused my attention to the threats in front of me, in time to see a circular blur fill my line of vision. A step too slow, it slammed into my face in mid-pivot. It was a moment of uncomfortable numbness, like when an appendage falls asleep, immediately followed by searing, stinging sensations that spread from my chin to my brow. I stumbled to the left, and then to the right, trying to reorientate myself. Once I regained my balance, I had but a single thought, which I expressed with loud indignation: fuck this. And with that, I made a straight path to the locker room and didn't look back. Not when the coach was screaming about not being dismissed, not when another ball hit the base of my neck, not for anything. Although out of my peripheral vision, I did notice that several of my teammates had fallen in behind me. I held the door open for them amidst the fury of shouts and taunts and booming ricochets. And then there was silence. Compared to the roar of the gym, the locker room felt like a cool, vacuumous cavern. Cinder block walls housed rows of double-stacked primary blue lockers and long, thin aluminum benches. We all sat down in succession, 4 of us, including myself. For a good minute, no one spoke, and the only break in the silence was the sound of our heavy breathing echoing off the concrete and metal. "What the hell was that about?" one of my classmates eventually muttered. "Assholes," I replied reflexively. Gasps for air quelled, tense muscles eased, features slowly shifted from exasperation to something approaching placid, and we shared a look that begged the question, what now? That unanswered query was instantly answered, not by any of us, but by our gym teacher, who thundered through the door with a flock of student aggressors in tow. There were 6 of them in all. He made a sharp hand gesture towards the bench to which we'd receded, when the pack of athletes begrudgingly sat down. His ire fell upon them first. "Listen up, you reckless degenerates. When I tell you to do something, I expect obedience and some goddamn compliance. You think you're being funny, taking all those headshots, acting like a bunch of undisciplined psychopaths? What if one of these pansies gets seriously injured, ends up in the nurse's office? What if their parents get the principal on the line and make a sting? I tell you what's going to happen. You morons are going to get suspended and cost me the rest of my season. And I am not going to let your roid rage get between me and the playoffs. Do you understand me?" "Yes, coach," the jocks shouted in unison. Then it was our turn. "As for you pitiful losers, you do not leave my gym without permission. I don't care if the other team is hurling bricks at you. This is my class, and if one of you decide, and I'm the one who decides when it's over, not you." My fellow physical education refugees were eyeing me, indicating that I, as the instigator of this little rebellion, should be the one to respond to the teacher's nonsensical tirade. You saw what was happening. Were we just supposed to stand there and get our skulls caved in? Your guys were assaulting us and you weren't doing anything about it, I replied. You want me to take action? Fine. Everyone is going to go outside and run the entire racing track. Twice. That's over a mile, one of the coach's wide receivers complained. You're right. Doesn't seem far enough. Run it 3 times. Wait, we're actually getting punished for not wanting to be pulverized? That's insane. And the last 2 people to cross the finish line are going to get 3 extra laps. The gym teacher continued, completely ignoring my objection. Now move! There was no point in protesting any further. This was just the way of things. Dominance passing as discipline, and policy sparked by frustration. We rose to our feet and were led to task. We assembled along the starting blocks, and I saw that the coach had moved the rest of the class to the bleachers to witness the consequence of defying his authority. No better way to exert power than through public humiliation. As the coach was addressing the class, out of earshot, one of the football players motioned for us to gather in, and I took a few cautious steps towards him. He was a husky linebacker, an intimidating mountain of a man who served as an immovable object on the field. Look, obviously things got out of hand in the gym, and there's nothing we can do about that now. But I have an idea that will make this all go a little easier, the giant suggested. What are you proposing? I asked. We all link arms and walk the track at a nice, relaxed pace. If everyone finishes at the exact same time, no one will have to run the course again. There was an unexpected logic to his plan. I assumed Behemoth was motivated by fear of losing to a bunch of scrawny geeks. His size may have made him formidable on defense, but it was definitely going to be a hindrance when in a long-distance foot race. I wasn't in particularly great shape myself, so I could empathize with his position. But if I was going to go along with this scheme, there was an unavoidable issue that needed to be addressed. How can I put this diplomatically? I don't trust you as far as I can throw you. And a few minutes ago, you were trying to knock my head off for your own amusement. Why give you another opportunity to fuck us over? Mistakes were made, but we're all on the same side now. Why kill ourselves being pitted against each other? We can take control of the situation by doing the last thing the coach would ever expect, working together. Again, the man's arguments made a shocking amount of sense. On your marks, the coach bellowed. Go! All the members of the football team formed a human chain, and the linebacker extended his hand toward me and my cohorts. His expression was affable, almost conciliatory. It wasn't quite an apology, but it was as close as one as we were going to get. We joined arms with our enemies and became a united front. Moving in lockstep, we casually strolled forward towards the finish line. Our strides relaxed and insouciant, and while I knew this alliance was temporary, the sudden sense of acceptance and camaraderie felt satisfying. An infectious bout of smiles, chuckles, and guffaws broke out as we basked in our own cleverness. If the coach was agitated by our conduct, there was no sign of it on his face. He was stoic and unreadable. About a mile in, one of the jocks began singing the theme to an old but easily recognizable Saturday morning cartoon show. And everyone joined in. This prompted a kind of free-form game, which we all took turns belting out vintage television tracks, challenging the rest of the group's lyrical knowledge by seeing who was able to follow along. And it went on like this. When we ran out of songs, we began exchanging dirty jokes and absurd anecdotes. Boisterous laughs echoed across the field, and in that moment, it was hard to imagine we'd ever been anything but friends. The end of the final lap neared, and our goal was in sight. It was about 50 meters away. Cooperating in a newfound spirit of tolerance and understanding would triumph over a tyrannical gym teacher's will. And then, the linebacker, stopping his body tail in mid-sentence, broke free of our interlocked ranks and made a mad dash towards the finish line. It took but a fraction of a second to realize what was happening. In an instant, our wall of solidarity ruptured, and it was every man for himself. There was a frenzy of motion as bodies to the right and left of me charged ahead with desperate intensity. Some were driven by fear and apprehension, others by competition and rivalry. But I was being powered by sheer rage. It poured into my muscles and pumped through my veins, culminating in an explosion of speed and fury. And that seething hatred rocketed me forward. And it wasn't directed at the athlete who betrayed me or the coach who ignored me or the sadistic culture that gave rise to this entire ridiculous scenario in the first place. No, the person I was most disgusted with was myself. The bastards made me feel like I belonged, and I let them. I embraced a seductive lie because it provided respite from an insufferable truth. My better judgment saw deception, and my weakness was grateful for it. And now a massive spotlight exposed my loneliness, and the only recourse was to run away from it as fast as I could. Temples throbbed and limbs shuddered, my gut twisted and burned, and streaming sweat stung my eyes. And while I was not the first to finish the race, I was far from the last. The gym teacher calmly walked toward us as we slumped over, coughing and gasping for air. The rest of the class had been dismissed sometime during our misguided exhibition. Not saying a word about what had transpired, he pointed to the two. I had to repeat the exercise and gestured for them to begin again. Both had followed me out of the gym, only to be punished twice for no rational reason. My animus had subsided, and in reflection, the linebacker had done me a great service. High school was nothing if not a series of games, and it was important to be reminded of the intention of the players, successful and ineffective strategies, and which rules applied to which competitor. Trying not to be depressed, I realized that by the number of people I could truly trust could be counted on one hand. I contemplated my next moves as the day's losers trudged wearily around the track.